This is Carol from the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. This is the adult cardiac user group call for November 19th. On the line with me today from STS, I have Leanne Jones, Addie Dolan, and Melinda Offer, who's our the FAQ mailbox princess. And then from IQVIA, we have Rhonda, JJ, Joe, and Melanie. So thank you for joining, everybody. Quick updates from STS and then IQVIA, and this is our user group call, so please submit your questions using the Q&A and we'll get to them. The focus of these webinars, the user group webinars, is really to answer your questions. So we'll get started here now. So for STS, our updates, we have the November training manual was posted. These included updates from the AQO. If you submitted questions during the AQO that we were not able to get to during the presentations, if we were not able to answer you directly, we did incorporate those answers into the training manual. If you see a question that you submitted that was not responded to, please reach out to myself or Melinda, and we'll be happy to get a response to you for those questions. But we did try to incorporate all of the questions or feedback into the training manual if we weren't able to get to them during the live presentations. Harvest 1 2020 report, as you know, the risk-adjusted report is posted. That includes your the risk-adjusted outcomes. The benchmarked report is the report that is coming very soon, hopefully within the next couple weeks here. We'll have that available on the IQVIA platform. It will be your benchmarked report for Harvest 1 2020. Going forward, the benchmarked report will be posted along the same time as the risk-adjusted reports are posted. And those will include things like your length of stay, which is, if it's not included in your risk-adjusted, include things like blood usage and other benchmarked outcomes that are not included in the risk-adjusted report. Harvest 3 closed on September 4th. We had a couple issues with vendors that caused a delay in getting the data over to DCRI for analysis. Those issues with the vendors have been worked out, or have been worked out for Harvest 3. We still are working on some updates with the vendors for upcoming harvests. Data is in analysis now at DCRI, so we should have those reports back fairly soon. And again, your benchmarked report will be coming out at the same time as your risk-adjusted report. And then Harvest 4 deadline, we extended that to December 9th. So if we sent out emails and we updated our website, but if you did not receive that information, the deadline for Harvest 4 close has been extended to December 9th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And last reminder is please do not forget to claim your continuing education credits for AQO by December 31st, the latest. After December 31st, you will not be able to claim credit. So make sure you get that in. It's fairly simple. You can do it right on the Cadmium platform to claim your credit. And I did it. It only took a short time to provide your evaluation. So please make sure you get that in and get your credit for attending. Now I will hand it over to Joe Brower and Melanie Bent for the IQVIA update.
Great, thank you so much. Let me go ahead and dive in. Thanks everybody for being on the call today. Starting off with some updates that were released a couple weeks back on November 7th regarding the dashboard report, the participant not analyzed dashboard report. STS 2994, 2219, or 2068. These tickets all had to do with the internal mammary artery used data element being displayed incorrectly on the dashboard. And so that should now be resolved. And then STS 3581 or 3387. These items had to do with the dashboard graphs not matching. So the discharge mortality graph at the top of the dashboard was showing up as blank, even though data was present for your site. And so that should now be resolved as of the 7th. The missing variable report, SCS 3603. The MVR was showing that some variables were missing, even though the values were present on the form, among those dialysis, warfarin, direct thrombin inhibitors. And so that should now be resolved. And then SCS 1864. We did make some updates to the logic for the initial extubation variable so that that will now correctly show up when it's supposed to. There were some situations where it was appearing even though it was present on the form. All right, next, a couple uploader validation enhancements that went in on the 7th as well. On the next slide, we have some critical error validations that were added for the following fields if they are missing in your file submission. And those are the surgeon NPI, the hospital NPI, and if your site participates in the anesthesia program, the primary anesthesia NPI. And so if any of those are missing, those will now trigger critical errors when you upload your file. And as with any critical error, if you do encounter this, that means the record will be dropped, i.e. it wouldn't be added to the database. So just keep that in mind. If you do have these errors come up when you're not expecting them to, that would be like if you are certain you have your NPI in your vendor system, but you're submitting your file and you're getting a critical error saying it's not there, please contact us so that we can look into it. You will probably ultimately have to work with your vendor so that they can look into why it's populated in their system but not coming out into the DAT file. But we can certainly help you look into those issues as well, just to confirm that the error is indeed coming from the vendor's side if you want us to do that. And this does apply to all data versions, so 2.81, 2.9, and the 4.20.2. Next slide, we have some updates that were released last weekend on the 14th. These were urgent updates that were included to get those resolved on a quicker time frame. STS 4506, the participant dashboard report, was showing procedure count discrepancies for some Q3 records for 2020. We did find that the procedure filter on the participant dashboard didn't display the correct counts based on the procedure selection you were making. And so that should now be fixed as of last weekend. And then STS 4493, both the missing variable report and the participant dashboard were showing incorrect counts for operative mortality, and that should be resolved now as well. And finally, a couple of items here. Yeah, let's do this one. Go actually 2 forward. We'll go 1 more forward and we'll hop back to that one. I'll have Melanie go into that one. Thank you. So items under review. These are a couple items that have been reported to us that are still under investigation. STS 4666. We're looking into this one. The missing variable report is displaying the organization participates in adult anesthesia variable as missing for sites who are not enrolled in the program. So we do just believe that this is an issue with the report showing this incorrectly. There's nothing you would need to do to resolve it, but we are looking into clearing up the report so that doesn't show up when it should not. And then STS 4631. Sorry, in regard to the MIPS performance report, we did receive a report that the results for the patient-centered risk assessment measure in the MIPS report was incorrectly flagging records for performance not met when they should be excluded based on the response provided for the risk discussed variable. And so we are looking into that to make sure that that is coded properly and that those patients do show up as excluded as they should. And before I turn it over to Melanie, if there's anything that we didn't go over today that you had reported that you're looking for an update on, please feel free to reach out, respond back to your tickets to request an update so that our representatives can look into those items and get back to you with more information. But our support team should be following up with you once your issues are resolved to let you know that those have been taken care of. All right, so Leanne, if you want to hop back 1 slide, I'll turn things over to Melanie so that she can go over the updates targeted for this weekend.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Carol. So this is an upcoming release that we have scheduled for November 21st. So the updates are related to the MIPS performance measures report. So for those surgeons or data managers that are delegates for the surgeons that review this report, we are doing an update to the report interface. We will have a brief demo to just show that, but just wanted to note that that change is going to be applied this weekend, where the case list is going to be housed in a separate tab. So we'll be showing that in a few, but just wanted to make note that that was coming. And then also also related to the MIPS topic, the consent form that is available, there is updated user guidance in regards to in conjunction with the report. So in conjunction with the measures report, a surgeon will have to make sure that they are consented, that they have an actual form entered for that participant site. If they have access to more than one participant site, they will need to complete a consent for those individual participant sites. And this is related specifically to the performance report. It needs that information in order to generate the report. So we wanted to make sure that that was clear and that guidance is on the consent form. Another item that's on the consent is just the notification to inform users that the consent form will be locked after the December 1st deadline. So if there are any other signups that need to occur prior to that deadline, once it hits December the 2nd, it will be locked. So we are just making sure that that guidance is out there to make sure that all consents are in by December the 1st. The very last item we have in regards to this weekend's update is specific to the uploader. So the following fields will be updated with a critical error validation. We have received data in the past in which it had caused issues in regards to the analysis side for DCRI. So these fields will now be applied with a critical error. That's data version. And in regards to some of these fields, they should be automatically generated by your vendor. So data version, for example, is an automatically generated field from my understanding. So that is not something that you as a user would have to enter that information. It would automatically be included in the export. So if you do encounter a critical error related to data version, then you will need to contact your vendor to advise that the DAT file is not including that field. Another field that a critical validation will fire for is the age field. And another will be the surgeon TIN. The TIN will not be required for non-US based participants. So it can be left blank if they are outside of the US. But if you are in the US and that field is missing, you will receive a critical error validation. And then the very last item or last field is the vendor ID. This is another field that you as the user will not be entering in. This should be added into the file via a systematic route through the vendor system. So if you're receiving a critical error on vendor ID, that is another field that the vendor would need to review in the DAT file to make sure that it was included. Okay, so that's the updates for this weekend. This information will also be posted under the notifications tab within the platform. Okay, and I think that's it. So if we can go to the slide for the demo, and I will hand over to my colleague, Rhonda Murphy, so she can walk us through the updated report interface for MIPS.
Thank you, Melanie. Let me share my screen real quick. And I usually share screens on my larger monitor, but I'm super excited to show you guys that we have recently enhanced the viewing area for our reports. And so I'm going to show it on the smaller screen today so you can see how the report will look once you guys open it up on your, whether it be your laptop screen or a regular larger monitor. So once you log in and you've navigated to your operational reports, you select the reporting period and then the surgeon that you wish to view, and then you apply the parameters. Real quick, I want to call out that I am in a test environment, so nothing you're seeing here is actual information. So once you make those selections and you hit apply parameters, the report renders in the screen here as you see it. So again, it's nice and opened up. There's nothing really scrunched up. There's not a lot of scrolling that you have to do. And the top section is the graphical display. So you see all of the measure performance here by measure in the top section. And then below is that tabular view of the data. So again, what you see up here just represented in a table so that you can quickly gauge what those numbers are. And then there's a footnote here. So a few of the measures that have the asterisk at the end, these measures are the inverse measures where the lower performance rate is better clinical care. So that note here is just, that note is put here just to remind the users that for those ones, ideally you would want to see these lower performance rates. And then now getting to, so most users just want to see a quick glance at performance and these percentages and how their population fell. But some users, want to drill down a little more and get to that detail information. And so we do provide that. So let's say I want to focus just on my tobacco and actually let's get fancy and say all 3 tobaccos. So I can control click and select all 3 of those bars. And what I've done is I've now also filtered my table below. So it's removed some of the noise of the other measures and I have that view of the tobacco and then this table. And now I want to get to that patient list. So let's say I want to see Q1 for each of these measures. I control click and I can select all my Q1s. And then there's a note over here that says, as a reminder to select the row, to view the case list for those selected rows. So I've selected those 3 rows and we have 2 different ways to get to this. You can use the case list button right here and click this and take you to the case list, or we have the 2 tabs down below here so that you can quickly navigate. If some users who are active Excel users, you're used to that tab feel, you can quickly navigate either using that or your button. And so once I'm on this page, as you see now, we have all of our Q1 tobacco patients. And so now that data is all listed here on this case list screen. It's out of the way from our table and our graph. So let's say I wanted to quickly export this. I can export this page using the export functionality without fear of having that patient information out there to, that gets printed out with this. So we have moved this over to the case list to accommodate those things of more viewing area, less chance of printing the case list, and also just expanding that case list out so that you're not having to view it so small in the bottom corner. Again, you have your slider bar here so that you can adjust your time range if you're interested in all 4 quarters or just 1 or 2 of those quarters. You can use your this slider bar here. And then at the top is that information about what participant, what surgeon, what reporting period am I looking at. So that is the MIPS report in a nutshell. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Melanie. I will stop sharing now and give it back to you.
Thanks, Rhonda. I think actually Carol is up, so I will turn it to Carol. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Joe. Now we're IQVIA support plan. Nothing's changed. Make sure when you do submit your questions into our Q&A that if you have a current ticket open with IQVIA to include that ticket number. When you're contacting IQVIA, be sure to include your PID, which is your 5-digit site number for adult cardiac. It will start with a 1 or a 3. So let's go over to Q&A. We do have quite a few coming in. Oh, first, I'll just tell you this information. The next webinar is, I can't believe it's already December 2nd, 2020, and it will be at 2 p.m. Central Time. Same spot, and I'm not sure what we'll be educating on, but I'm sure it will be something good Melinda and I will come up with. So I hope to see you then for the next educational webinar. Okay, let's go over to the questions. We do have quite a few that are here. This one is for IQVIA. Has the following been resolved? STS and DCRI are actively investigating an issue surrounding the 10th and 90th percentile labels for the adult cardiac risk adjusted dashboard. The NQF measures and update notification will be posted based on the results of the investigation. IQVIA?
I'm sorry, is there a question associated with that, or?
Has the following been resolved?
Yes, yes, it has. And there were subsequent notifications posted regarding those updates.
Okay, great, thank you. Just a suggestion for IQVIA. This is from Laura. It says, suggestion for IQVIA, it would be nice to have the sequence number along with data elements that need to be reviewed. I think sequence number, I know that the long name is posted, which is also helpful if you're looking, but on the data collection form, I use the short name and the sequence number. So I do agree with Laura that that would be helpful. And STS and IQVIA can take that back in one of the elaboration calls and talk about that, if that would be okay with IQVIA.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Next question. Would IQVIA be able to use a live note area on the software when they know there is a current issue with the software not working, so we don't have to individually email them about this? This would help us immediately know to try and work on the software at a later time.
So usually, and I'm assuming the live note area is the notification section. So for example, we did have that urgent issue related to the dashboard report and also the MBR. And so a notification was posted to let users know that issue was currently being reviewed. We are, and I do see where there are other messages that are being posted related to reports. So we just got confirmation from our support team that there is an active issue at the moment with reports. So a notification will be posted shortly because that just came through a couple of minutes ago. But that live area would be, I guess, equivalent to the notification section. And we do flag it as important so that it does have prominence, and then the notification will update that number also when you log in.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Melanie. Next question. Is there any way we can get a total summary of the cases, of the case type submitted and mortality status more obvious? I understand if it were missing, it would show on the harvest summary report, but it would be more comforting to see it laid out rather than hunt for it. And I believe that they can filter on case type in the missing summary, in the harvest summary report. Is that correct?
Case type, or so are we talking about like procedure types like isolated cabbage?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
so yeah, the dashboard report would actually give you that information. You are able to filter by the procedure type for the identified surgical date range. And if you're looking specifically for mortality status, it would be located under the discharge mortality report in the dashboard. So you would be able to see those. And if you wanted to export that list, you would be able to do so through the dashboard.
Yeah, IQVIA tried to make that pretty easy because they know how important it is at sites to check that mortality status for inclusion into analysis. So it should be their Joy. Maybe we can do another demonstration. If she's having a hard time, or Joy, you can reach out and we can help you further find that information. Thanks, Melanie. I do not participate in the anesthesia module. Do I have to answer sequence 7300, the anesthesia participation question? It does not show up in my vendor tool. Thank you. My understanding is no, that you won't be able to get to that in your vendor tool because it's located for the anesthesia participants. But I believe IQVIA that you are sites that are not participating in anesthesia, they're not seeing missing on the anesthesia section. Is that correct?
They should not see missing if they are not flagged as being as participating in anesthesia. So, and I think that there was, and I want to say this was fairly new with the MBR, there is a variable that is appearing. We did have a couple of sites state that the variable for organization participates in anesthesia is coming up as missing. So we are reviewing that, but you should not see, if you're not participating in anesthesia, you should not see the anesthesia variables on the MBR. Also on your dashboard, you would not see an option there. But please let us know if you're seeing those items and you're not enrolled in anesthesia.
Great, thank you, Melanie. Next question, will the surgeons have training on how to use the dashboard? So I'm not sure that we're doing surgeon-specific training. It's kind of difficult to schedule and have everybody's schedule available. We do have the resources posted on the STS website for surgeons, which you can share with them. We also have these webinars recorded, which can be shared. Are we planning? Is there anything else I'm missing that you can think of, Melanie, of resources that we've provided that surgeons can easily access?
I mean, we have the educational material posted within the platform in the library, also on the STS website. Well, I know the earlier webinars we did the specific dashboard reviews. I think we would just need to come together and if there's an additional need, then we would just have to look at what resources we could provide. We just want to make sure that if that's something that I think it's come up before.
Mhm.
So if it's something that what is being offered is not really meeting their needs, we can always review how can we assist further.
Yeah, we would love ideas too. So thanks. Thank
Yeah.
you, Melanie. Thanks, Jennifer. Next question, what is the time frame for isolated cabbage mortality threshold percentage? Is it still 4 rolling quarters, or did it increase to 2 years? So currently the threshold is the 4 rolling quarters. For this harvest 4 report, it would go back from October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. And it would have to be met, I believe, for each year. So you would have to meet the 2% threshold for 2019, and you need to meet the 2% threshold for 2020. So you have to be really careful with the last quarter of 2019 to make sure you meet that 2% threshold. It will likely increase to a 3-year or 36 rolling month period, and that will be coming in 2021. We will provide more education. We don't have a set date yet when we'll be switching over to that measure, but we will let sites know. Thank you for the question. Next question. Can you please clarify, Melinda, this one might be for you and I. Can you please clarify the reporting logic regarding post-op AFib? With prior versions, my understanding was if the patient had a history of AFib, A-flutter preoperatively, then they were excluded from the new onset AFib measure reported with each harvest. Is this incorrect? So the patient had to be an AFib at the time of OR entry, so it had to be a recent occurrence, and then they would be excluded from the new onset AFib. We also reported out a previous reoccurrence of AFib in the outcomes report with DCRI, and I believe we'll still be reporting that out with IQVIA. Melinda, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I can add is that if the patient is not in AFib, A-flutter, FLIB flutter, when they enter the OR and they have a reoccurrence post-op that meets the definition, treatment, et cetera, then that's going to be a post-op event of AFib. And like Carol said, we did have 2 categories in the last reporting. We had new onset, and then we also had recurrent.
Great, thank you. There's a couple MIPS questions here, and I reached out to Donna. She asked if you all could reach out to her with your questions, and I'll ask Leanne, would you please put Donna's email in the chat box so folks can reach out to her directly?
Absolutely.
Thank you. For any MIPS questions that you have. Next question, where are the isolated CAB metric footnotes for 4.2? Has anything changed? So we have the report overview is posted in the IQVIA library, and I'm not sure what footnote you're referring to, and has anything changed? None of the risk modeling has changed, if that's what you're referring to, Allison. Some of the mapping has changed, but none of the measures have changed. If you need more additional clarity, please reach out and let me know if I did not answer your question. Cindy's asking, are the variables you mentioned different than what was previously required previously to avoid critical errors? IQVIA, that one's for you.
Sorry, are the variables you mentioned different than what was required previously? Yeah, so age was not different. I believe age was already existing. We just wanted to make sure we reinforced that. But the other variables for data version and vendor ID and TIN are new. So that will be coming up in this weekend's release.
Great, thank you. I'm just, all the MIPS questions will need to go to Donna. Okay, what is the logic of having died in OR equal yes, null out the discharge mortality status, date of death, Kim is dead patient's data, completeness when running reports if you don't include died in the OR data element. So the back end logic of that is that we are using the OR date if the patient died in the OR, or we are using the mortality date or discharge date as the date of mortality. That's the way the parent-child relationships works had required us to do that. So in previous versions, I don't believe you were able to fill out the discharge mortality status in 2.9 for patients that died in the OR. So you'll have to program that logic at your site, Scott, to pull out patients who do die in the OR that you're pulling out with the date of OR. If the data manager failed to enter a value for organization participates in anesthesia module, do they need to go back and enter this if they do not participate? So I don't think you can get to that field if you do not participate. And as Jeanette has said, that as long as your site is flagged as participating in the anesthesia module, then you will not be seeing those fields as missing.
Actually, Carol, this is Melinda. I think that some of the vendors have that field available for them to answer yes or no. And I think that I've also seen a lot of questions about missing for that field if they don't answer it no.
Previously to the release that came out this past weekend, it was showing up as missing, but the release this weekend should have cleared that up for those sites. And the flag is occurring at IQVIA, so it's regardless of what the vendor has allowed access to on the forms for the sites. So we have a list of the sites that are participating in anesthesia that we share with IQVIA, and that's how they flag the site. So if the sites are flagged, then they will not see those as missing.
Right, Carol, there's a new issue. That's what I was saying a little bit earlier in regards to that organizational participates in anesthesia, where sites that are not participating are seeing that on their MBR. So we're looking into that to basically correct that issue. So that recently came up this week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Have you considered changing the harvest dates for 2021? Even though the date has been extended for this harvest, we will all still be behind for the upcoming harvest deadlines. Well, hopefully you'll be able to catch up. And the reason we can't extend it is because of some of our reporting obligations that we have at the beginning of the year. Total post-op vent hours are not calculating for cases that have patients extubated in OR and re-intubated in post-op period. My vendor Lumetics has informed us that two different instructions from STS contradict each other, and they are following the rule number 1, even though the rule number 4 says to calculate this scenario. So Kevin, if you could please reach out to me, I'd be happy, Paul and I will be happy to work with your vendor to explain that. I don't believe we have contradicting rules in the specs, but happy to talk to Lumetics about that. Our hospital had a lot of AV aort prac procedures performed, data elements marked as missing on the most recent submission report. The data elements are coded appropriately in ARMIS. Is it a known IQVIA issue, or do I need to submit a ticket?
We would have to check. We would have to check. So let me just give me a moment. Let me see if I can.
If you have not already submitted, if you could please submit a ticket, that is the most effective way for us to double check and make sure we have the specifics of your scenarios.
Great, thank you. I am seeing a question answered that the surgeon's tax ID number is required for harvest. And I believe I saw that come up as a critical error, Melanie, on the list that you had
Yes.
for the updates that are coming in. Anna's saying Anna's saying that she was told that if it was not, it was only required for those participating in MIPS. My understanding is, could you please clarify on that?
My understanding was that it's not just only used, TIN is not only just used for MIPS, there are other quality programs. So that's why it was decided as a requirement to have that field as critical. It wasn't just MIPS as the only reporting program that would require it, that it was needed for others. So that's why it was made as a required field. So not just related for MIPS.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Carol, this is Melinda. I think in the past we've told sites that they didn't have to put that in unless they participated in MIPS.
Yeah,
So,
I remember that too, Melinda. But now
so I think we just need to get that cleared up because
Yep.
I think there are a lot of sites out there that aren't putting that in because they're not in MIPS.
Okay. Yep. Definitely. We can follow back up. I know that that was one of the items on the list is a critical.
great, thank you. Beth is saying we need to be able to print the dashboards. The surgeons don't have time to navigate them. Same with the MIPS. This is a must for printing. Yet they are able to print the dashboards. So Melanie, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, you currently can print both the dashboards and the MIPS report. With the MIPS report, with the change that's coming up this weekend, it will not default to print the patient list if you have those items selected in the report. It will show on a separate tab, but you can export that list if you needed to review further. But if it's just to see the high level results with the graphs and the tabular information, you're able to export that using the file menu, and there's an option to export, and that will export the entire report on that first tab. And if you need to export the case results, you would navigate to the secondary case list tab, and you would be able to do the same. You can export to Excel, so you're able to pull that information from the report.
Great, thank you. And I just put Donna's email in the chat box for folks.
And there's also guidance. Let me just also say that in the library, there's educational guidance for the MIPS report and also for the ACSD participant dashboard report. And it does walk through the steps of how to print those reports. So please refer to that also if you need basically a walkthrough, because we do provide that in the documentation.
Great, thank you. Our surgeons would like to see their mortality data among all procedures. Is there an IQVIA report that shows the data on all procedures instead of just isolated CABGs or just MV replacements?
Yes, the dashboard does allow you to be able to use the all filter. So you have the ability to select all, or if you needed to just hone in on specific procedures, you could check those options. But you are able to select all and navigate to the discharge mortality report section, and you can export the data that's related to mortality within that report.
Great, thank you, Melanie. Melinda, there's a question from Cheryl. I'll let you answer in the chat box if you want.
I'll answer in the chat box.
Thank you. You can't. We likely have a vendor problem because we can access the anesthesia fields and it comes up in our local data completeness report. So it sounds like that's something IQVIA is further checking into. Is that right, Melanie?
Well, Cindy was saying that she thought her vendor has an issue because she can get to the field. I thought that's what I'm sorry, it just went away. But she said that she thinks that her vendor has an issue because she can get to anesthesia
Mhm.
and she doesn't participate. I thought that's what I saw, but it went away. So
No, that's what you saw. And it seems like there's a couple other people who are saying the same thing. And I think that different vendor software do it differently. What if our vendor's version does not currently include a data field for TIN?
so they currently don't have a surgeon TIN available for them to collect, is what they're stating.
Yeah, it's built into our specs. So maybe if you want to send that question over to me, Bill, I can reach out to Paul Meehan, and we can talk with the vendor about that. To print the dashboard and RIP reports, it literally takes 35 of those exports. Then you have to do a full formatting to get it not a plain text Excel file. Any feedback on that one?
To print the dashboards and the MIPS report. So with the MIPS report, it's really only one action if in regards to getting the summary level information. If you needed to have to print, which we're not really encouraging since that has patient identifiable IDs. But if you needed to print out or export from MIPS, it would be the secondary tab for the case list. But if it's just to receive the high level list of performance met, not met, or excluded cases, you would be able to do that in one action. For the non-analyzed dashboard, we do have an enhancement that we are reviewing to allow for a single print for all of those reports. So that is not currently available at the moment. So you would have to, depending on the different sections, if it's all sections, you would have to print each section. We understand that it is something that has been asked for, so we are looking at the priority with STS to when we can have that available.
And just to add, this is Jeanette, that comment mentioned both print and Excel. When we describe printing in these sessions, we're usually referencing the options under the file menu that do describe printing. Under the general export header, there are export formats like Excel. If you are trying to export the entire dashboard to Excel, then there is some complexity with all of the various tables and structures and all of that lining up. So the information that Melanie has shared and what we've been describing here has been relating more to printing. So if there's questions about Excel exports, we may need to take that up separately.
Thanks, Jeanette. To print okay, we did that. The dashboards are so small when you print them. Is there a way we can make them bigger? Also, can IQVIA please put page numbers on them?
So some of the options relate to your screen resolution and your settings. So if you'd like to adjust some of your view and then print from there, that is fine. But if you are viewing the system kind of from a smaller screen, then it tries to size it down. So we would encourage you to kind of go full screen so that it's kind of laid out and then print. And then as far as the page numbers, there are some default settings within the print options that are dynamic based on what you've got coming back in the report. So we need to look into the ability to add page numbers, but that would go on the list of suggested improvements, and we need to see what we can do.
Great, thanks, Jeanette. Is there a website to look up TIN numbers? I have 10 plus surgeons for 2 hospital. It's the week before Thanksgiving and 3 weeks before harvest close. Not a great time to implement such a change. And I agree. I think we need to take this back on one of our elaboration calls this week to discuss this requirement for surgeon TIN. Where can I find the ACSD harvest schedule for 2021? The harvest schedule for 2021 is not yet posted, but it will be coming out soon, and it follows similarly to the harvest schedules that we've had in the past where we've done 4 harvests a year. The first one will likely be ending in the 2nd or 3rd week of February, harvest 1. So we'll get that posted shortly. We're just finalizing the dates. We do not participate in MIPS and we do not collect surgeon TIN. So after November 21st with this update, when I submit my harvest data, I am now going to get a critical error for every record I submit that is going to cause a big problem. I hear you, Elizabeth, and we will discuss this between STS and IQVIA this week on our calls. Why are we still getting so many IQVIA issues with each new submission? Would expect to have most of these corrected by now, but seems new ones keep showing up. It's frustrating and time consuming, but I appreciate that. I understand your frustration. I'll let IQVIA take this question.
So ACSD experienced or had a data spec update, so we understand the frustration, but most of the feedback at this point is related to items being observed on the new data spec, which certainly was tested. However, we are hearing some feedback from some of the users that they're encountering situations, and we are working to address those. As far as some of the other items or adjustments that are happening, those are occurring in consultation with STS, and in some instances are a response to identifying gaps with some of the implementations on some of the validation checks being inconsistent amongst the vendors. So working to sort of streamline that process a little bit. We understand that that is changing some of the validations that are presenting to you and is a point of frustration. But the overall objective is a high quality data set within the data center so that you all are informed and find out about any issues that could negatively impact your analysis as quickly as possible. So working towards that objective together, we really appreciate your support and patience.
Thank you, Jeanette.
And can I also, sorry, this is Melanie, and I went back and I have to make a correction. So especially with this 10, because this is coming up a lot. My apologies. The 10 is going to be set to an error level, not critical. It's not going to reject the records. It will flag an error, but it will allow the record to be submitted to the database. So that will be a newly implemented validation. So you will see that on your data quality report, but it will not reject your records. So
That's
my correction.
wonderful news.
Yeah, but I was like, let me please go back and just re-verify this. So please know that it will be generated as an error.
Great, and you'll be able to filter on those by sorting. Is that correct? So they could ignore those errors if they don't provide the
they
TINs?
could sort and they could basically filter through by clicking on that column and basically just resorting the list, but it will appear just as an error message. And if you're not collecting it, it's fine. It is basically letting you know that it is something that we are looking for, depending on what that program is, MIPS for this example. But if you're not collecting it, it is not mandatory.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for clarifying that, because I guarantee that I probably have 50 emails and Melinda probably has 100 emails about that right now coming in, because we've been telling everybody not to put it in unless they participated in MIPS. So thank you very much for clarifying that before we got off the call. Melinda, there's another question in the box about the 5.0 liter Impella.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions about that. And I was going to talk to you about that. Because what people are asking me is, do we have to answer this on all patients, or do we have to answer this on just patients that get mechanical assist devices? And
It only needs to be answered on patients who get mechanical assist devices. Because it's a temporary field, we couldn't make it a parent or a child. I'm sorry, we couldn't make it a child to, if the patient had a mechanical assist device implanted or used during the procedure or during the hospital stay. So it's available on all patients. It really only needs to be answered on patients that did have a mechanical assist device, specifically preoperatively or intraoperatively, I believe. And I would say that if you did not have the device and you leave it blank, it's going to default to a no answer. We're really more interested in the yeses. So it is not required on all patients. It is required for patients who had a mechanical assist device implanted. And if there's any further questions, feel free to reach out. I hope that's helpful. Helpful, Melinda?
yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then if folks, I see a couple questions. It looks like Qcentrics is also encountering an issue with the total event hours, total intubation hours when patients are extubated in the OR. And I know that Paul and I have worked with the vendors, not on these webinars, but during the certification process on these fields. And I know we've answered specific questions for them because they had some confusion in understanding the data specifications. If you could please email me or have your vendor email me if they're still having issues, and we can work with Paul to have another call with them to clarify any areas of confusion. I'll put my email in the chat box. And then Tony says, for the site that was asking about the surgeon's TINs, Tony is saying that your physician credentialing department should be able to tell you the surgeon's TIN. So thank you, Tony. Couple questions about LAD distribution stenosis for you in there, Melinda.
Yeah, should I just say that out loud, because this is a recurrent question. So
I know, and we've covered it, I think, in previous webinars too.
yeah, I think the real hang up here is that people see this word current revascularization and they're thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? But what it really means is, what is the current stenosis in that distribution? That's what it really means. So for example, if you have an LAD of 80%, then you go to that, I think this is 1181, or I'm not sure the sequence number, but you go down to this distribution stenosis, and then you will code current stenosis greater than 70 because your actual stenosis is 80%. Oh, good. Carol's bringing it up.
So it's these fields here.
Yeah, so it would be LAD distribution stenosis. So this is current stenosis. So if it's greater than 50, you're going to say yes. And then you're going to go down here and say, well, this one's actually greater than 70 because it's 80%. It's not 50 to 69, but it's greater than 70. And then you're going to go down and say, is the location of the stenosis known? You're going to say yes. And then you're going to come down here. And this is a select all. So if it's in your native artery, you put native artery. But let's say you have it in the native, but you also have a stenotic stent, maybe in the distal LAD, not the mid LAD. So you would say native artery and stenotic stent for stenosis greater than 50%, equal or greater than 50%.
Great, and I'm a little confused. Where are sites seeing the revascularization?
It's not on this form. It is in the training manual in the data definition.
Oh, okay.
And so I think people get hung up on that term. And I think I even tried to, in November, clarify what that term means in the training manual, so that people would understand that, make it clearer.
Yeah, the issue is that we pulled that field over from a previous version, I believe, right?
I can't remember the exact details of that. But it's just that wording, I think, that throws people off. And so we've tried to clarify that.
Okay.
If you go to like, is that 1178? Here, see how I did that in 1180? Update.
Yeah.
Is the location of stenosis known within the distribution? Okay, so it's current stenosis within the distribution. That's what that's asking about.
All right, great. Thank you for the clarification, Melinda.
You're welcome.
I think right now we don't need a PR answer. What we ask IQVIA is work double time to resolve the issues. Issues are on top of another issues. It's filling up. So thank you for the feedback, Jeanette. Is the COVID temporary field still considered no if not answered? We really need you to answer that field, either yes or either no, not done, or not. Patient tested negative is what the no equates to, or the appropriate yes answer. So please do not leave those fields blank. Having your answer in there is very helpful for when we're looking at more closely at that data. ARMIS is also having issues with the total vent hours. They are hoping to release a resolution this week. And yes, there was confusion. Yeah, we worked with vendors closely on this one. So I'm surprised that Lumenix and Qcentrix don't have it corrected in their software. But again, happy to work with them if you want to email me, and I'll loop in Paul. If you could send me any emails that you circulated to your vendors, we can work on that together. What am I misunderstanding regarding the post-op vent hours not calculating if a patient is extubated in OR? So I think there was two issues. I think IQVIA did have an issue with it on their end. But again, IQVIA is not doing any calculation. So they're displaying what your vendor is what's in that .dat file coming over from your vendor. But there was a vendor issue with it as well. So you need to check your vendor software to make sure your software at your local level to make sure that is calculating correctly. And if it's not, I'll reach out to your vendor and have them, Paul and I can work with them to get that straightened out. Marina says this question was not asked in previous versions with this wording. I think the choice of wording has caused complete confusion. Thank you for clarifying, but I bet you haven't seen the last of this. And I think we'll just keep on referring people back to the training manual as they should be reviewing it monthly for updates like this. So thank you for letting us know. I agree that wording is confusing. I'm not quite sure where that came from. It's interesting, but like Melinda said, we provided this update earlier this month, and it's the location of stenosis known within the distribution. Quantris was told that the initial hour should be blank if extubated in OR. Is that correct? It should be blank if extubated in OR and not, that's correct. It should be blank, and blank will equate to 0. It should calculate into 0. And then if there's additional hours, that would get added into the additional hour slot with the 0 from the initial intubation time.
Yeah, but I think what's happening, Carol, because I've had this come through a lot, is that people get extubated in the OR, so then it's blank, right? The calculation's blank, and then they get re-intubated post-op, and then those additional hours, they don't, I don't know, for some reason, I've seen a lot of this too. And it's not with just one vendor, it's multiple vendors.
Yeah, what this person is asking is if the patient is extubated in OR, and I'll show you where this is at.
Yeah, I saw it on the specs. It's supposed to be left blank.
Yeah. Okay. So the calculation for total vent hours is performed by calculating the numbers of hours between OR exit and extubation date and adding the numbers of additional hours specified in vent hours A. The equation for calculating total ventilation hours must take the following into consideration. If either OR extubation exit date or extubation date are missing, vent hours is left missing. The difference between OR exit date and extubation date must not be rounded. If vent hours additional has no values, then vent hours total must be the difference between OR exit and extubation date. And these blue are new for this version 4.20. If extubation in the OR is yes, then 0 should be used for this part of the calculation, which would be this OR exit and extubation date. This is the total the initial vent hours. And any additional vent hours to generate the total postoperative hours. If extubation in OR equals NA, the patient is not intubated for the operation, but may be intubated after leaving the OR. Then 0 should be used for this part of the calculation and added to additional vent hours to generate the total postoperative vent hours. So I think it's these instructions are here, and vendors were having a difficult time understanding them. But like I said, we worked with them, Paul and I worked with them during the certification process, and be happy to work with them further if there's still issues happening at the site or in your vendor software. I think we're at time, so we're going to end here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. If we didn't get to your question, if it's a clinical question, please submit it into the FAQ mailbox. If it's not a clinical question, if it's related to IQVIA, to your IQVIA platform, please reach out to the IQVIA help desk at ststechsupport@iqvia.com. And if it's anything related to the database outside of the clinical questions or an issue with your IQVIA, please reach out to me at cperone@sts.org. So thanks everybody for joining. I hope you have a nice rest of the day. Take care. Bye.